Hello and welcome back to my channel. Hopefully you've been well. I myself I've been doing pretty great. And this episode, or this video rather, it's going to be a bit different. As you can see with the title, it's my Chasm overview, and I'll talk about my thoughts and what I thought about the Chasm, how I felt about it, how I continue to feel about it, and yeah, my overall experience. Because I mean, this was a whopper of an update, and you know, this update brought a lot, gave us a lot. You know, they introduced one of the most wholesome NPCs that adventured with us, and we were with for quite some time. And I'm still not even entirely sure how she's doing, actually. If she's okay, even. Hopefully she is. Let's check up on her right now, actually. But yeah, the Chasm, it was jam-packed with a lot, you know, a lot of experience. Well, it seems like Miss NPC isn't here right now. That's unfortunate. Well, I don't know where she is. Last I remember her being, it was here. But yeah. So to kind of start, I'll talk about not Inazuma, Overworld Chasm, and kind of the beauty of what it is here, what it's like here. And I'm sure a lot of us can really truly appreciate the aesthetic of the Chasm and how it looks so daunting, and that's because it is, right? The Chasm is pretty daunting, and then you kind of learn as you go about its history and what it means to a lot of the people that live here, that reside here.
Can I go catch up on my sleep?
And what it means for the Millilith and the history of Liyue. You know, we go through quite a lot. There's a lot of, not too many, but there's, you know, hints of a lot of things going on around the place. They talk about it, saying that this was like a battleground. And, you know, it shows. I don't know, there's like subtle things that people might miss. But let's see if I can find something here. But yeah, the place is I wouldn't say littered, but it's full of graves or kind of like stone memorials for all the people that kind of fought in the war or the battle that took place a long time ago. And it's like it's a bunch of stones that are kind of stacked together, and then there's a spear that resembles the lithic or the dragon's bane. Here, let me go look for that spear, or those spears. So yeah, so the spear resembles the dragon's bane or the lithic spear. I'm more inclined to believe that it was the lithic spear because it's Liyue based, you know. And yeah, it talks about unity. And well, I guess it's in this kind of way, it kind of resembles that, not resembles, but it means that they all kind of stand together and stand firm. And although some people were lost along the way, you know, their memories still stand strong, and the people that remember them and pass on their stories still stand strong. But yeah, the Chasm is so full of stories like that, very subtle, and very it easily goes unnoticed, to say the least. And yeah, like this entire place, the aesthetic, the color, I don't think we've ever seen a place as red as the Chasm. And you know, we can kind of maybe guess or kind of, what's the word? Kind of make an assumption that the red is like due to all the, you know, potential bloodshed that happened here centuries ago. And the trees could have kind of adapted and absorbed whatever like energy left from the blood, and that was like that stained the ground or whatever, stained the soil. And yeah, I mean, like, look at this place. This place is great, but I'm sure it looks better on a PC. Like, of course it would. But even playing on my phone, I can kind of appreciate the effort and, you know, the aesthetic of the place. It looks truly daunting, and yeah, it's a bit much to take in. Yeah, this place looks ridiculous. But yeah, my overall experience with the Chasm is, you know, it's nothing but positive. Like, it introduced so many things. There's a lot of different kinds of puzzles, you know, ones that you got to figure out, and ones that you had to use characters with certain elements, like totally new mechanics, new kinds of challenges, ones that are pretty subtle and like not really noticeable. It's like those dark gray platforms, or dark gray, what are they called? Pressure plates. And it's kind of like a timed event. Like, it'll only last as long as your geo construct or whatever. But yeah, and the music as well, as you can hopefully hear. It's like, I think I mentioned it before, it's so surreal. The music brings such a weight to it. At least for me, the way I kind of interpreted the music, it was something that was, oh man, it was striking. It struck me with a sense of danger, as well as a sense of beauty amongst the magnificent mountains and whatever these are. I don't know what these are called. Like, they be considered overhangs or whatever, but like, this entire place, it's truly interesting. And you know, they, throughout the world quests and the story quests as well, Archon quests, following through with all of this, we are told stories, lots of stories, you know. I wonder if I can turn that off when videos are around. Is there an option to turn off? Okay, yeah, there you go. Let's turn off dialogue volume. But yeah, so there's a lot of story, a lot of lore behind this entire place, you know. And like I said, a lot of it goes unnoticed, and there's so much history in this place. At least in the world of Tevat, that there's probably so much more history elsewhere that we really don't take another second to look at it, and we just take a glance and move on. But after experiencing the chasm, at least the surface chasm, it truly makes me want to go back and kind of explore everywhere else again, and kind of see if I left any stones unturned, if I truly saw everything. Because, man, with this place, it's it was something else. You know, it was a totally different Liyue. It was totally different to what we once knew, and it was so much more than what we thought it would be. At least for myself, I didn't think too much of the chasm. I thought it was just going to be like a mix of Dragonspine, kind of like Dragonspine-esque vibes to it. Mix of Dragonspine, a mix of Enkanomiya, and yeah, it in a sense it kind of was, right? Like the chasm had an eerie vibe to it to some degree. And I'm strictly speaking of Surface Chasm again, just to reiterate that. Yeah, like even the names of this place, like the little areas that they call it, I'm sure there's like even a history to the names of what they call these places. Just like everywhere else in these countries, I guess. You know, I'm sure there's history to all of these names. And yeah, like there is so much. There's so much to go through here. Yeah, Chasm's Maw. I forget what Maw meant, but that's besides the point. Alright. So let's move on to the underground. But yeah, I'm sure there's like a lot of things that I'm not talking about as of yet, but yeah, I'm just like, I don't know, just the overall experience of this entire place was just, it was so huge that I can't even put it into words, you know. But yeah, again, with the overworld chasm or surface chasm, they also brought us a lot of puzzles, like a lot of interesting ones. And like I said, they were ones that were unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of Genshin Impact, as of right now. That is, you know, we had freaking giant pillars of Geo. You know how crazy that is? They're freaking huge. Giant pillars of Geo that all resonated with each other to break stuff, and you know, there's those very, very hard to see walls that blend in. Man, those ones got me every time, because the only way you'd be able to differentiate whether they were real walls or not was was if you used elemental sight, and I myself, I'm not one to do that. I'm not one to use elemental sight unless necessary. So the chasm kind of taught me to use it. You know, it's a mechanic that isn't used that often. I feel like the most use it got was for bounties, and that was bounties only in like Mondstadt or Liyue. And otherwise, we didn't really get to see it in action, unless it was like a, what do you call it? A commission or something like that, like a commission or a quest or something. But yeah, there were so many different things that the chasm brought to the table, and I believe that there's so much more that we're not seeing. There were those nine Conrian runes, or Conrian texts. You know, it was plural, so yeah, there are quite a few of them, and I myself, I don't know what they mean as of right now, but I'm sure there are implications as to what it means, and like people have already figured it out. I mean, you know, the Genshin fandom is relentless with these things. I enjoy the lore, but every now and then I don't dive into it as deep as everyone else has. So yeah, I'm sure they have really interesting translations, I guess, and they mean quite a lot to the overarching story of this place and maybe of Conria itself. And yeah, we're also shown a new side to the Fatui, which is something really interesting, you know? I don't think too many people brought it up. I haven't looked online, but at least from conversations with other people, we never really looked at it, you know? The fact that there were Fatui in the chasm, stuck for who knows how long. Like, they're stuck for an ungodly amount of time, and we got to see that they were just normal people. They were just normal people that truly wanted to do good. That they truly did, you know? And we encountered an individual, and then we countered a group. And what was interesting was that they were totally unaware of the situation on the surface. At the very least, of the situation that their people brought about to an entire nation. Like, they were doing some pretty treacherous stuff. And yeah, they were left in the dark. So there's so many questions and really no answers to be had. Like the first question, at least I can think of, is when did they turn? When did they turn into the quote unquote bad people that they seem to be right now? And at least to me, it seems like even with the Fatui Harbingers, they had regular lives to some degree. You know, they had lives that were probably just pretty standard, pretty everyday, pretty average. And they had their own lives. Like Signora, she had a name before Signora. I mean, of course, you know, that's pretty obvious, but why change your name? Why even change your name? If your name is so and so, why even change it when you become a Fatui Harbinger? Like, there are a lot of questions. Even recently, you know, with the Hues of the Violet Garden event, we get a name drop of where is it? Is it this one? I don't remember which letter it was. What it looked like. This one, was it, maybe? I don't remember where it was. Where is it? Oh dear lord, I don't remember where that letter was. Oh, it was this one. Dear lord, are you kidding me? But yeah, we get the name of Scaramouche, and it was Kuni Kuzushi. So he had an entirely different life than what he did now. And same with Child or Tartaglia or Ajax. Like, he has 3 names. 3. And I'm sure it's explained, but at least, like, the question still stands as to why are all these Fatui harbingers, why are they leaving their lives, or at least, you know, what they once lived like? Why are they turning back on the lives that they used to live to join the Fatui? And I'm pretty sure at least Tartaglia, his motives were for combat, because he loves the thrill of battle. But then that leaves to question all the others. There's still Scaramouche or Kuni, and there's still Signora, and by God, I keep forgetting her real name. What was her name? Rosalind. And here it says she was innocent, a naive existence. And yeah, there's something odd with Snezhnaya, or however you say it. There's something odd that links them with Khaenri'ah, at least in my eyes, that links them with Khaenri'ah and the Abyss Order. And something's going really, really, really wrong. Or something seems to be really wrong here. And yeah, there's so many questions. So many questions. Like I said, when did the Fatui turn bad? Because when these people that we meet in the chasm, these Fatui companies or battalions or squadrons, when we meet them, they're under the assumption that they're doing good, holding off the evil, holding off the muck, or holding off the filth that keeps infecting the land here. They're under the assumption that that's their whole purpose as to why they came to the chasm to begin with. You know, to help the Millelith, assist them in fighting back and fighting off the evil that lurks deeper within the chasm, that not many people have gone to witness and gone to see, only then to be cut off from their own people because of something that changed. And yeah, again, it goes back to the question as to what changed with the Fatui, what changed with the Cryo Archon for her to all of a sudden change. And at least what I believe and what I think, or theorize, I guess, is that maybe the Cryo Archon had an interaction with a sibling, with Lumine, which kind of drove her to think an entirely new way, completely different way than to what she thought towards her people and the other nations, which is why she's taking such a sly and snake-like approach into kind of becoming a poison to these other nations and wreaking havoc in the slightest way, sneakiest way possible. And yeah, we've seen it. We've seen the Fatui take advantage of so many situations and do so much wrong. And I truly believe it has to do with the sister. I truly believe it has to do with Lumine. And I mean, just based off the patterns of the story, I believe that a lot of the wrongs that are happening in Tevat are because of the sister, are because of Lumine. And the job of Ether, not really job, but kind of as he goes along his journey throughout the entirety of Tevat, he is going to undo the chaos that Lumine brought upon all the nations, both directly and indirectly. I think that she indirectly caused a lot of the chaos by her interactions with the Cryo Archon. And you know, because if you at least kind of picture this, you never really see the Fatui and the Abyss Order interact with each other. You never really see them look at each other as enemies. There's no, at least to my knowledge, there's no interaction between the two of them to identify each other as enemies. And, well, they say the enemy of your enemy is your friend, right? And so the enemy of the Fatui is the Millilith, is Ether, is the Knights of Favonius. The enemy of the Fatui is the Archons. And so all the Fatui and all, like, the entirety of them, like, they're all going after the Gnosis or Gnosis of the Archons as well. And I'm sure their influence runs really deep, the Fatui, because they've got deep pockets and they run banks, and I mean, they're essentially politicians, you know, corrupt, and will do whatever they can to get their way. And I believe it all kind of links back to the Cryo Archon and to the sibling, because there are a lot of links to the sibling here. I mean, you know, moving on from the Fatui theory or whatever, but yeah, as we see that kind of truth unveiling before us as to what's really going on here and what the chasm is, and what it had to do with the Hilichurls, what it had to do with Dainsleif, what it had to do with the sibling and the Abyss Order. And they are all of one kind. They were all Conrian. Or at least once they were. They were once Conrian. And we kind of learn how tragic it is to be a Hilichurl, and the kind of tragic lives that they live. Very aggressive creatures that used to be people, but were cursed. Were cursed by an unknown force. And I'm sure we'll uncover a lot more of you know, the dark truths of what's happening in the world of Tevat, and what the higher beings outside of Tevat have to do with all the bad stuff that's happening within Tevat. You know? Because I feel like there's a lot of things that are unsaid. A lot of heads are being turned, a lot of ears are falling deaf to the real situation that is kind of underlying throughout the entirety of Teyvat. Like, first of all, why did people not even question the existence of hilichurls? At the very least in its early days, when Conria did fall, and all of a sudden there were hilichurls, right? People didn't start to ask questions, like, where did these creatures come from? What were their origins? Or did it have something to do with the Archons telling their people to turn a blind eye? Because it wasn't their problem. It wasn't their nation. After all the Archons look after their nations and their nations alone. I mean, clearly you can see the mindset and the will of the Shogun is to protect our nation. And yeah, we still have a lot of other questions, like this thing that's been on the screen for probably quite a while. The shriveled seed. Seemingly withered object that seems to, by normal judgment, be a seed. However, it still has a surprising amount of life in it yet. So a seed that came from a tree. A seed that talks about life. I don't know. This one is pretty interesting. You get the seed from a tree. And around that tree were three, what are they called? Like elemental pillars. And there's something off about this seed. First of all, it's a quest item. And next, it's purple. It's 4-star, which means it's the only thing of its kind. Now, at the very least, there's no other thing like it. You know, you can see all of these other things. There is never gonna be another thing like it. And it makes me wonder if it's somehow related to the world tree, or a tree of life or something. You know, if the chasm was kind of a center point of a lot of things that happened. I mean, there's a Conrian city, for God's sake, buried there upside down. And, you know, there's so many ties with Conria, with the chasm. Not only are there the Black Serpent Knights, you know, who are tasked with defending its people. And that's another point to think about. They attack us. They're hostile towards us. They aren't hostile towards hilichurls. And they are hostile towards us because we attack hilichurls. Us as the player, as the traveler, we've slaughtered them. For daily commissions, for quests, for bounties, for requests. And that's another thing that's really dark. You know, for the Black Serpent Knights, they are still following their orders to protect the hilichurls, to protect their people. But us as the traveler still slaughter these hilichurls and go even further as to slaughter the Black Serpent Knights. As we saw in the Archon quest, they are just following their last orders that they received. At the very least, one of them were still sentient and still commanding the rest of them. Halfdan was still, ordering them around, telling them what to do, what not to do. So at the very least, they still had a bit of sentience within them. They still had will to do what they were told. They still had a part of what they once were. They still had a part of themselves, even after the curse had taken effect. And yeah, like us as the players, we sometimes don't really see it that way. Oh, what the hell was that? Yeah, well, that's weird. Bloody Bixby, I need to turn that off. Oh dear, phone sliding off the freaking thing. But yeah, so it leaves me to think about who truly is the enemy here. And I'm pretty sure Lumine says it before, or along the lines of it, like, we'll know the truth at the end of the journey. Something like that, right? I hope I'm not butchering it, but there are a lot of enemies every direction we turn. And at some point, you really don't know who the real one is. Who truly is the enemy here? Who is truly trying to wreak havoc and cause a lot of trouble? Because, I mean, we got to see two sides of a lot of factions today. Or at least not today, like throughout the entirety of the Chasm. We saw two sides. Two sides of the Fatui. Meaning that there was some internal conflict that changed the purpose and changed the direction of what the Fatui did and what they are moving towards. So something happened with the Fatui. And again, we see something happen with Conria. We see something happen with its people. The curse is afflicted upon all of them. And so they are made to look the way that they look and are made to act the way that they act. And they suffer from extreme pain and suffering on a regular because they were a nation without a god, from what I can understand and what I remember. So that's already two sides to the factions, the Conrians as well as the people of Snezhnaya. And not only that, we are also brought with the information of the letter of Kuni, who is Scaramouche. And we are told of Rosalind, Signora's other life, how she led an innocent life. And something changed. Something changed. And so, wherever you turn, wherever you look as the character, there are always two sides of the coin, of every coin that's surrounding us. The good and the bad. And sometimes we aren't really looking at things at its fullest, but only looking at things at face value. And sometimes we can only see the bad because that's the only side of the coin that's facing us. And sometimes the other side of the coin is buried in a crap load of lore, a crap load of history, a crapload of conflict. Conflict that might be internal, or a conflict that might be hidden away from everyone else. A conflict that might be unknown. Maybe unknown to even the entirety of Teyvat. And it still makes me question. It still makes me question this. This cryo gem. A 5-star one. And all of these are kind of like messages from the Archons themselves, or at least have some kind of a hint of the Archon. And their ideals. Like Hydro, the Archon of Hydro is all about purity, and you can kind of get that idea from fighting the Oceanid. And so this still continues to puzzle me. Sorry, and there's dots, so I'm assuming it's apologizing directly to someone. To also have you shoulder the grievances of the world. Since you could endure my bitter cold, then you must have the desire to burn. Then burn away the old world for me. So previously, I kept thinking that this was Lumine. That this was Lumine talking to Ether at some point in the future, or maybe some point elsewhere. Long story short, I kept thinking that this was Lumine's message. But now, I'm beginning to think it's the Cryo Archon's message to Lumine. And how maybe she apologizes for her involvement with Conria, with the destruction of Conria. And now Lumine has to shoulder all the loss of her people. If she truly is the princess of Conria, she has to shoulder that entire burden of her people, and how they're spread across the world, all over Teyvat. You see hilichurls in Inazuma across a vast ocean. You see hilichurls in Dragonspine living in harsh conditions. You see hilichurls in Mondstadt. You see them in Stormterror's lair or Dvalin's nest. You see them everywhere. And so, maybe when it refers to the grievances of the world, it's referring to the grievances of her people, spread out throughout the world. And maybe the Cryo Archon was once close, or once was friends with Lumine at some point in the past. And maybe she's saying, when she says, since you can endure my bitter cold, then you must have the desire to burn. So this makes me think that the Cryo Archon, if my theory is, somewhat correct, or I'm going based off the logic of my theory, if they were friends, and then the incident happens, and then Lumine, who is the ruler of Conria, goes to the Archon, the Cryo Archon, asking for help, only for the Cryo Archon to give her the cold shoulder, pun intended, I'll have you know. Only for her to give Lumine the cold shoulder. And making Lumine truly realize that she is now all alone in this struggle against the entire world. She's all alone with no one to stand beside her except for her followers that are still able to think for themselves. And then you have this last sentence. Then burn away the old world for me. With the actions of Lumine and the Abyss Order, if this is truly the Cryo Archon, I believe it truly is a message to Lumine, and that they're working hand in hand. Because now Lumine has the fire, the passion, to restore Conria and her people, but as well as to rid the world of the Archons responsible. And I feel like this might be two sides to one coin. Again. Except this coin, on one side is the Fatui, on the other is the Abyss Order. So on one side the Cryo Archon, on the other Lumine and her following. They are pursuing a goal, but going about it in two different ways. Because Conria was a country that had power, but did not have a god. And Snezhnaya is a country with both power and a god. And now they're all of a sudden pursuing something. There's a change. And what I believe that to be is an interaction. That change is the Cryo Archons meeting with Lumine after the death and destruction of Conria. And we see Lumine in the chasm with that flower. And she is truly trying to revive or restore what once was. And so I think this is a war on two fronts, if I'm going to be honest. A war undoing the chaos that Lumine brings, and a war with the Fatui, undoing the havoc that they are causing non-stop. And it's all very vague, I know. But this might be a start. There is definitely a lot more to this. A lot more than I know. A lot more than a lot of people know. But yeah, the chasm is what brought me to that way of thinking, where this could be Lumine here. And it made me think about where Conria was. And why is it in the chasm? Or at least why is part of it in the chasm? You know? Because there's a lot of questions. And unfortunately I don't have the answers. Maybe Tevat Historia will. If you're interested in Genshin lore, Genshin history, he's your guy. You should look him up. Maybe I'll put him in the description. I'm not always watching his content, but I truly love his content and appreciate it. But yeah, we see a lot of remnants of Conria in the chasm. The ruined serpent, or what's it called? There's a different name to it, actually. Oh, it is Ruined Serpent. I believe. Wait, where was it? I believe it was called Chasmic Serpent at one point, but whatever. Ruined Serpent works, and yeah. So, I mean, all ruin mobs are from Conria, right? At least that's its origin. And we see a lot of it here. We see a lot of knights. That's all the pins. And we see quite a few ruin graders, quite a few ruin sentinels, and ruin jellyfish and crabs. I don't remember the actual names of those, but we see quite a few. So there are remnants of Conria everywhere. Everywhere. And yeah, there's so much, man. There is so much to this game, to its history, to its lore. And yeah, I feel like this might be odd, but it's just something I'm thinking of right now. These gems might be imbued with history. These gems might give Ether the same effect that he has when encountering something that Lumine has been in contact with. How he all of a sudden gets visions of Lumine. And so maybe all of these are Lumine's interactions with the Archons. But yeah, the chasm is it's full of secrets. It's full of a lot of things. I mean, supposedly it was underwater. For heaven's sake. Like, there were fossils. A lot of them. And the researchers said that the chasm was once underwater. And then there's that huge mushroom. Man, that's interesting. And then there's that room that looks like a sacred place. That room. That room with the two serpent knights that had the light shining on that circle. Which part of the map is it? It's this part. This part. This part here. Like this general area. There's something very interesting about that place. And I'm sure there's a lot more to it than a lot of us realize. I mean, the entirety of the chasm gives us a lot more than we realize. And, well, yeah, I think that's all I can muster. That's all I can really offer in terms of theory, in terms of experiences, in terms of, you know, how I felt and whatever. Like, it truly was an amazing experience to go through the chasm. As frustrated as I might have been, you know, for some of those episodes, it was honestly such an enjoyable experience. and I I'm so excited for what's more from Genshin Impact. I'm sure there's so much more that they have in store for us. But yeah, that cryo gem still leaves me to, oh man, it really, it's still making a mess out of my brain. But you know, I'll let it be. It's fine. It's not gonna hurt much. um but yeah, you know, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I truly love the lore of Genshin, and so I really enjoyed doing this, you know, just talking about Genshin, talking about what could be. Because yeah, there's so much, and unfortunately I don't really have too much time to dive into all of Genshin and dive into all its lore and all its theories and potential connections and whatever else, but hopefully in the future I do, so that I can continue doing this, because I really love doing this. But yeah, as I said, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you look forward to more. I love you all. Take care. I will see you all in the next video. And goodbye.